Welcome to Holistic Dog Behavior, the podcast, where we explore the science, emotions, and stories behind dog behavior. I'm Megan, a certified dog behavior consultant. And I'm Bridget, Megan's twin sister. We're here to make understanding your dog easier and more accessible. Join us as we break down complex topics and share practical insights to help you and your dog thrive every step of the way. Before we dive in, a quick note. The information we share on this podcast is meant to be educational and empowering, but it's not a substitute for professional advice tailored to your dog's specific needs. Always consult with a qualified behavior professional or veterinarian if you're dealing with serious behavior or medical concerns. Dogs are individuals, and every journey is unique, just like yours. Hey, everybody. It's Megan here. How's it going, Bridge?
Hey, hi everybody, and hey Meg, it's going good. We both are like standing at our standing desks today.
Yeah. I got a new desk.
I got a new setup.
I'm so pumped. It looks so cute. I was able to put up all my dog pictures.
Yeah, it looks really good.
Looks
Yeah,
awesome. Actually, this isn't even all of them. I have a bunch more.
I know. I've like have my two little ones behind me, and I'm like, that's not enough.
Yeah, I agree. I don't even have one. I don't have one of Maple yet.
I know.
So I got to get
one of Maple.
Yeah.
Such a cutie.
They're just laying in their bed. Well, Leo's bed, but Maple's curled up right next to him.
Nice.
Taking a little nap. All right. So we're going to talk about a question that I get a lot today.
Yeah, I'm excited about this.
Yeah. It's one that like a lot of people are really concerned about, and it's a very frustrating question. So I wanted to get into it and see what we can give people to help them feel more empowered and more understanding for their dogs.
Yeah.
Which is like my thing. Understanding your dog helps so much. All right. So the question, I'm going to start with the question. Does that sound good?
Yeah, sounds good.
So the question is, why does my dog sometimes react, but not other times? And I get this all the time in client consults. I get this from just like friends who are asking me questions, or strangers if they find out I'm a dog trainer. And they have a reactive dog. They're like, why does this happen? It's so frustrating. And I totally get it, because it is really frustrating. Because it can seem really random, and then you feel like you have no control pretty much.
Yeah.
Because you think you know how to prevent it, or you think you know why it's happening, and then something happens that messes all that up.
Right. Yeah.
Messes up that knowledge. Or that feeling of like, oh, I know what's happening. And then you're like, what?
Yeah.
What the hell was that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it can be very frustrating, and I get it. So have you ever experienced that with Remy or Hazel?
I'm trying to think. Yeah. Like, especially Remy is so different from what we think of like in terms of behavior issues that she has. So I'll go to Hazel, and she definitely has reacted some triggers, and then the same triggers occur and she doesn't react. For example, when we see other dogs, when we're on a walk, sometimes she has a reaction and sometimes she doesn't. Yeah. And we're still learning about her. So
yeah, she's still very new to the family. So
yeah,
it makes sense.
Yeah.
But
that's part of it. Yeah, that is part of it too. Like, we don't know all of her cues for sure. So like for you with Leo, like, does that happen with him?
Yes, all the time. And I am always like, half the time with Leo, I feel like a failure of a dog trainer, because I'm like, I should be able to like nail all this stuff with my dog. And I'm too close to it. That's why I have so many problems, because I'm just way too close to him. And so it's really hard to like be objective like I can be with client dogs.
Totally.
So
I like literally have to like sit down and try to change my brain away from like, oh my God, my baby, I love him so much. Um, to like, what are the facts?
Yeah.
What is happening?
Yeah. That's a good point. I feel like people might need help understanding how they can do that in their own situation too. Like,
Mhm.
what am I missing
Yeah.
because I'm too close and too enmeshed in this
Yeah.
situation?
Uh-huh.
Like,
Yes. Yeah. It's really hard to look at your dog objectively about behavior stuff. That is also why it's helpful to talk with somebody like me because I can be more objective
mhm.
and see things that are a little clearer.
Mhm.
So yeah, but Leo struggles with this same thing where he some days he'll react and some days he won't.
Yeah. And
And
like, is
so
that when he's inside or outside or
both.
anything? Okay. Like
Yeah.
on a walk, looking out the
Yep.
window.
Doing
Yeah.
training in a big field, like yeah, like
Mhm.
his 3Ds are constantly changing.
Mhm.
And they will for you guys too, listeners.
Mhm.
Which is again super frustrating, and that's why behavior work is really hard.
Yeah, we're
Because you
based.
yeah.
Yeah. It's like I'm giggling because oh, it is frustrating. And like we're here trying to like help people, but then we're also just like, yeah, it's like a lifelong thing with dogs. It's
Yeah.
like you're gonna have to help them manage it their whole life,
Mm-hmm.
probably, which
Mm-hmm.
similar to humans.
Yeah.
But yeah, so okay, so why do dogs with behavior issues sometimes react and then other times don't?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This
Or is
can
it,
also happen
yeah,
to dogs who don't
who,
have overt behavior issues or like who don't
yeah,
have behavior issues in general. It's just like every dog has a
yeah.
threshold.
That's what I was just going to ask you. I was like, is it just, yeah, like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
such a, yeah, it's pretty much any dog and
Yeah.
anyone.
Yeah. So let's get started on that then.
Okay.
One of the first things I always talk to people about is just the concept of it's called trigger stacking. And it essentially means that, and let's just go through what a trigger is really quick first again.
Yeah.
A trigger, it can be, it's not always, but it can be something that, um, or a trigger in general, even including like humans in this case, is something that um, is happening internally or externally for you or for your dog that causes a reaction of some kind. And when we talk about triggers, it's typically like it causes a negative reaction, like a fight or flight response.
Yeah.
Whether that's like an overt fight or flight response or it's like it's slowly turning into a fight or flight response. And that's also where we talk about like threshold, where they're like they can feel some stress
Yeah.
up to a certain point, and then once they hit that point, that's the threshold that like if they go over it, that's when you get like a full blown reaction.
Mm,
And
hmm.
that depends on your dog what that looks like.
Hmm.
But with Leo, it's like lunging, barking, snarling, all the intense shit.
Yeah. And
Um,
that's, and so repeating what I am hearing you say is that when they're above that threshold is oftentimes after they've been trigger stacked or
no, that's just when they're having a like a triggering
any kind of
response.
reaction from by being triggered.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Okay.
And then when we talk about trigger stacking, it's when your dog has a lot of those happening subsequently. So like one after the other. Boom, 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 boom. And that's why
Okay.
it's like
Mm,
stacking is like one thing happens, then another thing happens, then another thing
yeah.
happens, then another thing happens. And it brings them closer and closer to their threshold until they're
Yeah.
like, I can't cope with this anymore.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Um, and that can look like one of my favorite examples is to give a human example of my life. Um,
Hmm.
and one time I was an intern doing engineering stuff and it was over the summer and I was living in a new apartment. And so that number one is like potential for a little bit of stress because it's like a new place. I had a new roommate that I had never met
Yeah.
before, new
New
job.
people.
Yep, meeting a bunch of new people. So that in itself was like, whoo, it's very
Hmm.
like a lot is happening. So it could
Hmm.
be, it wasn't necessarily like a negative trigger, but it was just like something happening in my life that made me have a little bit more stress than normal.
Yeah.
And so then I had one particular day where I woke up and I was running late to work. And I was like, oh my God, shoot, I gotta get over there and I gotta drive over to work. And I was like, I don't have time to shower. And so I went into work and I was like, oh my God, I hate that I'm feeling like I didn't get to shower. Um, and then I got in and I realized I forgot my badge. So you have to like sign in and get a guest badge. And oh my God, it's so annoying. And then I'm like, oh my God, now I'm even more late. And then I was late to this meeting that I had. Luckily I was just a little intern, so it wasn't like that big of a deal. But I was like, I want put on a good impression. Oh no.
Yeah, oh, of course. Yeah. Everybody's
then,
been there and it's like no matter what,
yeah.
it's anxiety inducing.
Yes, yeah. And it caused a physical reaction because I was feeling those stress hormones in my body. And as soon as you start to feel that, like it's and like they're still in there. They have like a half-life. It takes them a while to get out of your system once they are triggered to be in there. And that's kind of the basis of trigger stacking, is like you're already like, once you have one, you're prone to having more reactions more easily, because you already have a bunch of stress hormones in your body and they haven't fully dissipated yet, because they take days to dissipate, really.
Yeah.
Like totally fully. That's also where we could talk about chronic stress too. If you have lots of trigger stacking happening throughout their lives and throughout each day, that's how you build chronic stress in a dog, in humans too. And then chronic stress causes all kinds of things that are not so good, especially physically.
Yeah.
So back to that day, I was late. I had to sign in and get a fancy badge, or not fancy badge. It was an ugly badge. It was like stupid guest badge. And I was like, everyone's going to know I forgot it. And so then I had also like forgotten to eat breakfast. So that's another level of like, I'm not coping well because I don't have any food in my stomach.
Yeah.
And so then throughout the rest of the day, I was just like having a bad day, because it started off so poor. And so like I didn't bring any lunch with me, so I had to like try and figure out what to eat. They had a cafeteria, but I was like, oh my God, I like need to like get something substantial. And so, but I like, all I really wanted from what they had was like a salad, and I was like, well, it's not so great. And I like love food.
My
Same. God. It's like I feel, and this is probably a psychological thing that's like not good. But I don't feel full if I don't like what I am eating.
Totally. Like you're not satiated because it's not soul food. It's not filling your soul.
Yes. And I just like, it makes me frustrated and irritable,
Mm-hmm.
which is like not great. And that's some stuff that I've been working on to figure out. Like, it's all right if you don't love what you're eating. But it's like that. Don't do that all the time to yourself, But anyway, so that's one of my triggers, is like, I didn't,
when you're having a really bad day and you need that. Yeah. Like satiating,
full body, full spirit fill. Yes. And I didn't get that day. So I was like, but I had this like little shining light at the end of the day where I was like, I have this like little mini lasagna in the freezer that I can eat later. So I was like, all right, it's fine. I'll eat something good later. And then the rest of the day I had like another meeting where I was presenting one of my projects, like through it was like a preliminary like design review. So it wasn't like, oh, this is the final product. It was just like, this is where I'm at with this thing, with this project. And something didn't work in it. I was demonstrating some code that I had created to do a certain thing, to make a process become automated. And during the presentation, it didn't work the way I wanted it to. And I was like, oh, I don't know what's happening here, so I'm gonna have to check that out. But I was like, now I'm embarrassed and like, I don't know like what happened. And so like I like have this anxiety where I was like, after the meeting, I like immediately went and tried to figure it out. And then I was like, oh my God, I like ran to my boss and I was like, I figured out what was wrong. And they were just kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
And I was like, I needed more than that from you.
Yeah.
And so then it was finally the end of the day. And I drove home and I got my little lasagna out of the fridge or freezer and I put it in the oven and like timed it for however long it needed. Um, and I was just like waiting for it, like, I'm excited to eat it because it's yummy. And then I took it out and I dropped it on the ground and I burst into tears. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I was like sobbing, crying, like could not. I was just like, this is the worst. This is the worst. I can't handle this. That is essentially like a human example of trigger stacking, where like one thing after the other happens and you can't keep up with it in terms of being able to cope. Yeah. And then you have for this thing that like is not that big of a deal, where I like dropped it on the floor, I have a way over exaggerated reaction to it.
Totally.
For something that normally I would probably be able to handle, because like I had other food in the fridge that I still would like I could make a little quesadilla or something, and I love quesadillas, or I love cheese in general. And so it was just like that's basically what trigger stacking is like your dog gets to a point after like several things have happened, and for some dogs it doesn't even need to be several things, it can be just like a couple things, especially depending on the severity of like and the intensity. They essentially overreact to something that normally they'd be able to cope with.
Right.
And a lot of people see this after they've been training for a while. And they're like, oh, they're doing so good. Like they can cope with this. And like, then they can't all of a sudden. And people are like, oh my God, what the fuck?
Yeah.
You were doing so good. Like what happened? So, and that can just happen sometimes too, where you have like a dog who just has little setbacks anyway. That's part of the process, but a lot of times you'll see it after trigger stacking. And so what just quick example of what trigger stacking can look like in a dog is like for Leo. We had the bug guy come and like spray around the outside of the house for bug stuff. Luckily Leo hates that. We work on it every time, but this time I was like, we're not going to work on it because he's already a little bit stressed, because I mean, he's stressed because Maple's a new dog in his life and he's still kind of getting used to her. So that's like one level of triggers.
Right.
And then for him, like the bug guy coming is another level of triggers. And like yesterday he had a bad day. He was just like struggling with some stuff outside, like cars going by and stuff, and like loud car doors shutting, because our air purifier was not working, and usually the air purifier blocks out all those sounds for him. So he had a bad day yesterday, where he was reacting a lot. Maple's here, so that's just like a baseline like stressor for him right now, as he still gets used to her. And then the bug guy was coming today, and I was like, no, we're not going to deal with that. So he had bully sticks. We had all the blinds closed. We were in this room with a loud noise machine on, and which is still on. I don't know if you probably can't hear it.
No, we can't hear it.
Yeah, these are pretty good microphones. But
yeah,
if I hadn't known the bug guy was coming, which luckily we have good guys who let us know the day they're coming, and then we can call them and be like, can you not knock on the door?
right.
You don't need to. We don't care if we're here or not. When we don't care if we know that you're here, we just need to know which day you're coming and like around what time.
Yeah.
And so if I hadn't blocked out the stimuli for him there, it probably would have been something he could not handle. Like we couldn't even do training with it. Like, whereas normally we do training with it and we watch the guy go around the house and Leo gets treats for looking at him and Leo like has a fun time. Whereas with all this trigger stacking that he's had the last couple of days, I knew he wouldn't be able to handle training like that. So we just blocked it all out and avoided the reactions for now. So that's kind of what trigger stacking is in dogs. You can also see it like if, for instance, your dog has to go to the vet and you have to get in the car and they're not usually in the car, and then you guys pass by, you get to the vet and you're walking around to go potty, and then a dog comes out or two dogs come out, or they have to walk past a person in the parking lot, and they're a dog that doesn't really like those things, and then they have to go into the vet, and then they have to go they have to go into the room of the vet, and then they
have a reaction at just the person walking in the vet walking in the door.
Right.
Those are kind of good examples of trigger stacking too.
Yeah. So. I have like an example that we can just, for the sake of the exercise, pretend this dog doesn't have behavior issues, even though we don't actually know yet. Hazel, over the holidays, we were visiting Seth's family, and she has never been to their house before. She doesn't do super well in the car yet.
Yep.
She basically we haven't really had a chance to introduce her to children much. And there were children there and a lot of adults, a new place. She had to drive in the car for 3 hours on the way there. She was on medication so that she didn't throw up in the car, and like all of those kinds of things, to the point where we were there for a couple of days. And even, I mean, she was likely trigger stacked just from that first day of all those changes. But then we were like, the kids and two of the adults left one evening, and I just kind of figured like we had them kind of in a little pen area for most of the time, just so that they were kept safe in a safe space and they had their own space. And also so that people so that they didn't like eat any food off the ground that like I couldn't keep them from eating or something, God forbid. And so,
especially with little kids around, like they'll be dropping stuff pretty easily.
Yeah. I'm like so paranoid about that. I'm like, oh, do they eat? But they were fine. And the night that the family left with the kids, we let them out to just, they had explored the rest of the house a couple times, but we let them out like kind of permanently to just like hang out with us in the living room while we were all like chatting and whatnot. And then Hazel just like couldn't settle down, which is unusual for her at that time of night. And so I was just trying to like help her cope, and I couldn't quite understand why, but I think she was just trigger stacked. I think part of it was like she was like, are they coming back? Do I have to be like prepared for them to come back?
Part of it is probably like, oh, I have different access to this environment now.
Yeah.
And like even if that was like a good thing, it can still be a little bit overwhelming. Too.
So that was like an environmental change on top of it was pretty much a lot of environmental changes on top of environmental changes that like she just kind of couldn't cope. And then eventually she did rest. But then the next morning, our family member runs a daycare at the back of her home. And that morning she had, I think 2 kids who came, and Hazel started shaking, and we were just like, okay, time to go, because I think part of it was like another environmental change. Like she was like, oh my God, I thought the kids were gone.
There's like new
kids.
What?
So, and I don't think and what's so interesting is like, it's so hard for me in the moment to explain to someone, because I'm not an expert, and then explaining it to someone who like maybe doesn't really have a ton of context to the expertise in this industry. It's hard to explain that like it's not necessarily that our dog can't handle children. It was that the context was too overwhelming and there were too many changes. And I said she's trigger stacked. But not everyone like knows what that means. So
it's
interesting.
It's not as much of a human term, trigger stacking,
which it should be.
It's like I think it applies.
So useful.
Honestly,
it's like overstimulated is like trending through social media. Like everyone's like, I'm overstimulated, or like reactions to when I'm overstimulated or whatever. So that's kind of like the
similar thing. And I think it's like it does exist in humans. It's just people use the phrase trigger stacking for dogs.
I love it's such a good term too, because it's like a visual.
Right. I love visuals. Visuals
you can
are like,
picture it like
I keep thinking like I really need to like create my own visuals so I can like show them to people.
We can try. Like, they might not look very, we might have to hire someone who's like actually an illustrator,
yes,
but
yeah,
I could try. I'm like, okay. I mean, our sister Heather is an amazing artist, so she
could potentially help too. But yeah, I just like really think that sometimes the visuals can help. Although a lot of my stuff, the way that I think about it is like graphs, which is like not accessible to a lot of people. But
well, there's a skill and an art to data visualization. So
yeah, your husband knows that too. Yeah, I feel like he's a very good at that. We're talking about you, Seth. Hopefully he listens to this. I'm sure he will.
Yeah, he listens to all of them.
He's very supportive. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's a great idea. Start posting them at some point, maybe. But visuals are very helpful.
Understand. Yeah. But yeah, so you actually said something that helps us move to another concept that I'm interested in talking about today. Awesome. Where you said like it's kind of just the context where like it's something was happening and the context created her difficulty coping.
Yeah, like she was just too overwhelmed, couldn't cope.
Yeah. And a lot of times when we see dogs who sometimes react and sometimes don't, is because their trigger is contextual. It's situational. And sometimes that can be like a very specific context, which also is super frustrating. And sometimes it's really hard to see.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of people get frustrated too, because they're like, this is something that they've been able to handle before. Like, what is happening? What's the difference?
Yeah.
And so sometimes it can be that we don't actually fully understand, or we haven't fully pinpointed exactly what their trigger is.
Yeah.
And that can make it really frustrating and difficult to do behavior work. And this happens to me a lot too, because I am constantly trying to do that like detective work.
Dog sleuthing,
dog detective. I gotta figure out we gotta find a sting for that. Or Marky has to make us a sting because it's so cute.
We'll add it in here.
Yeah. So I just I'm always doing that, and even I can't pinpoint it right away. Sometimes I have to like kind of wait and learn more about the dog and learn more about the specific context that things are happening and ask more questions. And and then it kind of reveals itself, right? But a lot of times when people are like, you could handle this before, what's happening now? Why can't you handle it now? Is because of a certain like context. So yeah, I think before I get into that example, we're going to take a little break.
Sounds good.
All right. See you guys soon, or hear you guys soon. Listen, whatever. We'll be back.
Whatever.
Okay. Good job. All right. We're back, everybody. And I remembered the example that I was going to talk about. So, again, we're talking about an example where the context is super important, and why a dog might react, but sometimes and not other times. And talking about that in terms of like the context and why that's important. So the client I had had a new dog. They had just adopted the dog like a month prior, and he had been doing well. They had he started to display issues with visitors coming into the house, but it wasn't until like after a period of time, which can be typical for dogs who are in a new home. They don't fully express their actual feelings until they feel more comfortable. I always say this as like a analogy. If you're a parent, or if you were a kid, everyone was a kid. But when you were a kid and like you went to a friend's house and their mom says to your mom when she comes to pick you up, "Oh my gosh, your daughter or your son was an angel. Like your child was so great. Like you're so lucky to have such a polite kid." And then the parent is like, "What are you talking about? They're a monster. They're a monster at home. They're so annoying. Or they're so like, they leave stuff all over the place. They never clean up their dishes. Like they don't even put them in the dishwasher, whatever." That's a really dish specific example. I don't know why I thought of that. But
And it's like, that's a really good example of when you don't feel comfortable expressing like your true self around someone you don't fully trust and like feel comfortable with. That's why, like, that's why
Yeah.
you don't express or you're not like comfortable to do the things you would normally do, even if those things aren't really like great.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so that can be a contextual thing as well. It's based on trust and things like that. Um, but for this particular dog, it was probably because he needed time to like decompress and begin to trust them.
Mm-hmm.
So that usually it depends how long it takes for that to happen, especially depending on like what their life was like before that. And so they called me because they started to see these displays of like growling and lunging at individuals that came into their home. And we talked about it a lot, and we kind of pinpointed that it's a very, because they were wondering like, he was fine when we had people over for Thanksgiving, and that was like 20 people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't actually know how many people it was. I'm just guessing that it was like a good amount of people. And they were like, yeah, he was like sitting on people's laps and like cuddling and like didn't bark at anybody at all. And so as we got into it a little bit more, we realized, okay, there's a specific context where this is happening, and it's when only one or two people are entering the house and
Mm-hmm.
they're near him when he's in his spot on the couch.
Ah.
Yeah. And so that's like, that is the very specific context of when it's happening. And we don't necessarily know why. They actually had a really good theory that it was, maybe it's because it looks familiar, because he had like 4 different homes within like a month or two before
Oh.
they took him in.
Yeah.
And they felt like maybe it was because when 1 or 2 people come in and pay attention to him, that was another part of it too, is like they paid attention to him.
Mm-hmm.
Another part of it too was that his dad had to be near him.
Okay.
So there's like a potential complexity there of like he's resource guarding his dad and he's worried about the people
Okay.
when he's in his spot specifically. So again, like super specific
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
So like their daughter came home from like to visit for the holidays, and she had met him before, but he like growled and lunged at her a few times
Mm-hmm.
within like the first 12 to 24 hours. And then he kind of relaxed after that. And the theory that they actually had was that because he moved around homes so often and so frequently so recently,
Yeah.
whenever it's like 1 or 2 people that come in and kind of like approach him, he has most likely associated that with being taken away.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Like
Um,
yeah, and of course he's new, and so everyone's like interested in meeting him.
yeah.
But that is how
That's what
the
it looked like to him whenever
potential adoptive parents treated him when they came in.
exactly.
And he's like, I am not going through this again.
Yeah, like don't come near me, don't touch me, don't pick me up. Yeah. Um, and so that's why when it's more people, and especially in like a party context too, it's less likely that he'll display those behaviors, because when it's a party, typically people come in the front door, but they don't necessarily pay attention to the dog.
Yeah, yeah. It's
They're
like not
like,
about, he's like, oh, nobody cares. It's cool. I can just
nobody
go up
cares
and
about
say
me.
hi, and then they'll like interact maybe if they
Hmm.
want.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Wow, that is so niche and weird because
Mhm.
like, wow.
When it just
Truly
shows
dog
like,
detective there.
yeah, it just shows like how specific
Mm-hmm.
they can get, your dog can get
Yeah.
with their triggers.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to mention one other thing with that too, is like he may not have like directly associated like you might take me away. It's more like he and he could be, he might have actually associated when a single person or maybe 2 people come in the door and pay attention to me and my dad nearby. And we haven't fully figured out like why that is happening when
Mm-hmm.
his dad is nearby. But I mean, there's a lot of theories there too. We don't necessarily have to know why. We just
Mm-hmm.
need to know that it does happen.
Right.
And that's so one of the things that is important kind of to clarify is
the dog might not have known like or remembered that exact situation. It just felt familiar, and that's where triggers come from. It's like they don't necessarily like it, just that situation feels really familiar in a not so good way to that dog, and that's like essentially what triggers are, why triggers happen,
right?
Or part of the reason.
He's having that like somatic response and isn't necessarily identifying in the moment like most humans struggle to do.
Don't know why they're triggered until they really like think about it.
So if that's helpful, like that's such a huge thing right now just in popular culture, I guess, is being able to identify your triggers like in the moment as a human being is super hard. And so you can't really expect your dog to do that, especially because they don't really have that like brain component.
It's not. And we can't directly communicate with them the way we can with humans, like in terms of language and stuff like that. But I mean, we don't necessarily know that they have that complexity in their brain.
True. Right. Okay.
And it's most likely not. Most likely not. Because that is a really high level, like most likely just human thing. Because we have such developed brains. So
that's
so it's really like it's kind of just another level of empathy to be like, oh, you're not necessarily like directly comparing these two situations, but you can feel it in your body that it's like feels similar. And they're not gonna it's really hard for them to like do internal, like they can't really do internal like self-reflection. It's just they're just reacting, and so that's where we have to also, that helps us inform the way we train with them, because we have to utilize like classical conditioning really heavily, so that we can literally change their emotional response, because we can't rationalize it with them. Like you just can't.
I know. I think that's amazing too. And like, I'm going to add that it's like, the training for sure, obviously, is the biggest component to this. And then like the advocating and mediating for your dog is like how you can help them, because you, like you said, you can't rationally explain it to them.
No matter how much we want to.
I
want to do that with Leo all the time, where I'm like, just, you're all like, I know you're just reacting.
One time,
it's okay.
My at work once, we did these like icebreaker things, and one of the questions, it was like, would you rather be able to speak to all of your pets like in perpetuity and only your own pets, or all wild animals and not your own pets? And
that is so mean.
I know it's really just like a messed up question, but
no, it's just like,
I want both. Yes, same. I would want both for sure. I mean, like, if you can talk to animals and that's your magic ability, you're going to be able to talk to all animals. I'm sorry, though. There would just be no universe where it would be like, you can only talk to your pets and not wild animals.
What kind of fantasy world is that?
Either way. A lot of people said wild animals, and I was like, what? I was like, I would love to be able to tell my pets that they are okay in any given situation and have them actually understand. And people like looked at me like I was crazy, but I was like, you don't get it. Like my dog has separation anxiety, and I can't communicate to her that we're gonna be right back, and it's like heartbreaking. But
and again, like through training, we can build that. Through trust and
it's possible,
and changing emotional responses and things like that, of course. But it takes a lot longer than just being like, I'm going to talk to you and help you understand.
So true. And like the buttons and stuff too. Like people can communicate with their dogs with the like language and to a degree. I don't know the science behind all of that. I'm sure it's like really
it's still
intricate.
In progress too. Like people are still trying to figure that out. It's very cool.
So cool. I love watching those videos. But
we'll tag some actually in the description, because What About Bunny is a great one, and she's like actually involved in
the research, right?
I think they wrote a book recently too, which I have not gotten or anything, but that might be a total like lie that I'm just coming up with because
If
I'm
they didn't,
remembering
they
something.
should.
Yeah. But I might be remembering incorrectly, but we'll see. If not, then I'll put it in the notes that we messed that up. But yeah, all that stuff can really help you eventually get to the point where you have that trust and communication.
Yeah.
So that they actually are doing better. And then of course the training comes in as well.
Yeah. And I think within your own way, you can communicate with your dog, obviously, through training and other things and biofeedback.
Yeah, all that. You can, you can literally talk to them. I talk to Leo
and talk to
Mabel
them.
all
Yeah.
the time.
Same. Yeah. I don't
There's a
have,
way, it's like a
yeah.
mindful type talking. Sorry, but
Yeah. No, I was just saying, agreeing with you, and that I do the same. I don't have as extensive vocabulary with my dogs as you do with yours yet.
yeah. But it's just like, that's it. It's like, for anybody curious, I'm not going to go into it too in depth, but you basically talk to your dog like you're teaching them, like you're teaching a toddler language.
Yeah.
Or a baby language. Where you say things like for Leo, they're both in here, so I'm not going to say anything that they know because they'll be like,
I can.
Well, one thing that we taught Remy that we're trying to teach Hazel too is like Remy, oh man, she loves food so much. And every day it's like the earlier she can try and force us to give her dinner, the more she'll try, which we're reinforcing for sure, probably. But anyways, it's winter and she's hungry, so she gets a little extra. That's fine.
Yeah.
So, but Remy kind of has learned the word soon.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna get it'll soon. Like,
yeah.
Or like if she wants to go on a walk, like I don't want to say it too loud.
Yep, I know, yeah.
But I'll say, okay, like soon. And she like she'll be like she'll do a little kind of like
yeah.
Leo knows not right now. Yeah. He knows like work. I'm working. Later.
Oh, yeah.
We'll play later or like
Nice.
OUTSIDE later.
Nice. Oh,
if I say that, he'll be like, ah,
yeah, exactly.
He's like, he's taking a nice little nap right now. And if I said it, he'd probably be like,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. So, but anyway, let's get back to it.
Okay. Yep. Another tangent.
I know. Yeah. But I really want to really quick touch on the 3Ds again, because that is a very obvious reason why your dog might react sometimes and not other times. If you're in like a behavior modification like program, or if you're like really, if you've been doing a lot of that type of training, you'll know that the 3Ds are distance, duration, and distraction, which is also I use a lot of people, I think, in the behavior side use intensity instead of distraction, because it's not as much of a distraction for your dog, where it's like taking their mental space. I mean, it is taking their mental space, but in a way that's like really, that can be intensity means like, how intense is it for your dog? Like, can they cope with it? Essentially.
Yeah.
It just like distraction in normal training is more just like, oh, there's a toy over there. Maybe I'll go get that instead of do the sit.
Yeah.
That's can be sometimes a little bit better of a description of distraction.
Yeah.
And so the 3Ds come into play. And again, like all this stupid stuff. I mean, it's awesome stuff, but all this stuff is so frustrating because they're all interplaying with each other all the time. Oh my God. Sorry. Maple just sniffed the noise machine and turned it up a little bit accidentally, like with her nose.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny. Was she like, we've got limited amount of time to finish this because she's getting antsy now.
Okay.
We can do this. Yeah. So the 3Ds can come into play. If you're really the 3Ds we did cover in a previous podcast. So if you need a more in-depth explanation, go back and listen. Yes. So just keep that in mind if you're like, oh, we were, especially if they are trigger stacking or if they've been trigger stacked in the last couple of days, the distance, duration, and intensity are going to totally change.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so just keep that in mind as you think about this stuff. But yeah, the last couple of things I just wanted to touch on were like how reinforcers can impact what your dog is able to do and why they might react or not react. And so that can come into play if you have a really high value treat or a really low value treat.
depending on the 3Ds that are happening again.
Mhm.
If they react because the value of the treat has to be higher than the trigger in that specific moment, meaning other things are affecting them in that moment, like trigger stacking, or potentially like the next thing we're going to talk about is something, it's a very fancy term, but it's called motivating operators. It's like a psychological thing. This happens with humans too, where something in their environment, and that's including like the trigger, something in the environment, internally or externally too, for the dog, impacts the the actual like value of the reinforcer to them.
Okay.
So and this is like the most complex concept that we're going to talk about today. Can you hear Maple?
No.
No, she's like, oh.
She's
She does that
whining.
when she's like, yeah,
Like
but it's
little,
not whining. It's like
like
a
cry howl.
yeah. And now Leo's awake too. Oh, we might just have to take another break so I can take them outside. We'll
Yeah,
see.
that's okay.
But yeah, motivating operators are very confusing. It took me like forever to understand them. And there's even more that we can go. I'm not going to go into it, but like I had to learn a lot about these things to literally pass my certification test. And because they can be really important, especially in this context of why is my dog reacting now and they didn't react this other time.
Mhm.
And again, it kind of comes into like trigger stacking and things like that. Like all this stuff is constantly happening and constantly changing for your dog. And so, and a good example of how the environment or like the let's see, like events and conditions, the situation in general, um, that is happening, kind of to your dog is what changes the value of the reinforcer for them. So, for instance, like if they are hungry, food is more valuable
Mhm.
to them in that moment. Um, and so that can come into play. And that's not me saying don't feed your dog until you're training. No, because then if they're really hungry, they can't fucking cope with anything.
Yeah.
Like
They're just like
like a
too
human.
excited for the
They're gonna
food.
get hangry too, or
Mhm.
like they're too yeah, like they can get too excited for the food. But like for instance, if they're really full, food is not as interesting, not
Yeah.
as valuable in the
Mhm.
moment. Uh, so like that's a really simple example of why or how the environment, the internal and external like things that are happening to your dog
Mhm.
can impact how valuable the actual reinforcer is for your dog.
Yeah, that I like that
Exactly.
example because it's simple but also like very effective in like visualizing it.
Mhm.
I think for most people,
Yeah.
um, and you might not want to be touching on this at the moment because you probably have other things to discuss, but just like the way that you have expressed to me the difference in motivation in breeds.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you think I was going to say?
No, I didn't know you were going to say that.
My question is just like, if you're having trouble understanding your dog's motivations, like would breed come into it at all? Like beyond
It
just,
certainly can. It
yeah.
certainly can. Breed can come
Hmm.
into everything with
Hmm.
behavior.
Yeah.
But in terms of like motivation, like if your dog is a terrier, like Remy, sniffing is inherently more motivating for her because she's been bred
Hmm.
to really like enjoy sniffing because her job used to be sniffing out rats
Hmm.
to kill or squirrels,
Hmm.
rodents.
Not her
Anything.
job specifically.
No, but like
her
as a
breed. Yeah.
terriers in
Her
general,
genes.
like yeah, they were especially like
I would love if we could get her into a barn hunt setup and have
yeah,
her like,
she would probably love that
I
sniffing out
know.
rats
Anyways,
in a bunch of hay. That's
yeah.
basically what barn hunt is for people who don't know. Like you can, it's a sport, it's a dog sport
Yeah.
where you can literally like allow your dog to hunt out rats, and they're not killing the rats, and the rats are in like little containers that they feel safe in. Like the rats are conditioned to feel safe with a dog
Yeah.
sniffing in their face. it through a container. So that like you're not actually killing the dogs are not actually killing the rats. It's just they're finding them, and that can be super reinforcing for your dog. Especially if your dog is predisposed to that because of their breed. So yes, okay, that can come in. Cool. Well, nice little like tangent, but not exactly what. Probably got a little off topic there. So, but
no, it's definitely related though, and I think that was some people I think will benefit from hearing that.
And like we can put some resources about like understanding your dog's breed on our website.
Yeah, that'll take me some time to put together, but I have there's another trainer, she's a certified dog behavior consultant as well, who has tons of information about that. She has a book about it too.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Let's like put her book on on there for people to go find.
Yeah. All right, cool. So that is kind of
it's right there behind me.
Nice. It's called Meet Your Dog.
Oh, there we go. There it is.
By Kim Brophy.
No, people listening will just you cut it out. We'll just cut that part out.
No, I think whatever.
I think it's good.
Okay. Yeah. Although I'll have to check that you actually pointed at the right book. Because I couldn't see it for a sec. Oh, yeah, there it is. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Yeah. Yeah. It was next to that lighter blue book. So I was like,
it's like
it's a dark blue
dog.
book. Yeah. So yeah, those are some of the things. Again, it's like dog behavior can be very complicated, but also very simple at the same time. We do overthink a lot of it. But those are some reasons why your dog might react sometimes and not other times.
Yeah.
So hopefully that helps relieve a little bit of frustration and gives people more understanding. And like I said, helps you feel more empowered and compassionate towards your dog.
Yeah. I think that's a wonderful sentiment to leave people with.
Yeah. So stay tuned for our next episode, which we don't know what it's going to be about yet.
Yeah. And thanks for listening.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Music for Holistic Dog Behavior, the podcast by Mark Shevlin. Art and design by Studio HMS. Produced by Holistic Dog Behavior. We hope you enjoyed this episode. To learn more, follow us on social media at Holistic Dog Behavior or go to holisticdogbehavior.com.